Clemson fans, welcome back to another episode of the Clemson Sports Show. We're so glad to be back after about a week of not doing one of these shows. Got a jam-packed episode for you all today, talking about the upcoming game against Florida State, the QB battle, injuries, and even my time with Arch Manning on Wednesday. But before we get into that, let's bring on Matt Connolly, my co-host along this episode. Matt, how's everything been going with you, man?
Yeah, man, doing well, hanging in there. Had a fun trip at Pittsburgh. Had some good food, good time up there. First time I'd ever been up there, so it's a lot of fun. Obviously, the game didn't go great for Clemson fans, but still a cool trip. And I think Clemson fans that made the trip had a good time as well.
Let's kind of talk a little bit about that game before we get into the upcoming matchup. We weren't able to do a recap of that Pittsburgh game. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw from the Tigers. What were your overall thoughts on their performance against the Panthers?
Yeah, the game honestly went about how I expected. I mean, I actually picked the score 27-17, which is what it ended up being. So
worth a lot of numbers, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had them. But I mean, it was about what I thought. I thought Clemson's defense would play pretty well and give them a chance, but the offense would continue to struggle. One area I was pleasantly surprised, I think, was Clemson's running game. I thought did some nice things. They had some new wrinkles that they put in for this week. So I thought that part was good, but still the passing game bad. Obviously, Clemson, Dabo said it every week, Clemson doesn't have a big margin for error right now. And so when you have a pick six, the way DJ did, you're just not going to win when you have those kind of mistakes. So that was probably the turning point in the game. Obviously a big drop by Will Shipley as well. Just some costly mistakes when they had opportunities. But yeah, honestly, the game played out about how I expected.
All right, so you brought up DJ, and we're going to skip the order of things that we originally had planned. Let's go right into that QB talk, that QB battle a little bit. Got DJ Uiagalelei and then Taisun Phommachanh out there. Both of them took the field against Pittsburgh. Just talk to me a little bit about what you saw from both quarterbacks. Did the offense work specifically with one in particular?
Yeah, so I think DJ's ceiling is higher. I mean, I still think in order for Clemson to be a top 10 type team, top 20 type team, he's going to have to play well for them to do that. I just don't know that Taison's ready to be a quarterback of a top 10 team. But with that said, DJ just continues to struggle with kind of the basics. He had a ball, his first interception, he was targeting Justin Ross on a play down the right sideline where he wasn't open, and you could tell he wasn't open. It's first down. In that situation, throw the ball away, live to fight another down. At the least, you're going to get away with points, get a field goal with the way BT Potter's been this year. So, take care of the ball right there. He does it, and he throws a pick. Clemson loses points. He has another throw, obviously the shovel pass later in the game. He had another pass that could have been intercepted that was dropped right before his shovel pass pick six. He had a fumble that Pitt should have recovered. So just a lot of costly mistakes that he made and continues to make. He missed some easy throws once again where he had guys open for potential big plays. Now, he did make a great throw to Will Shipley, and he dropped the ball. So, his receivers didn't help him, and running backs didn't help him a ton by any stretch, particularly in the passing game. But still, just missing too many of the easy plays. On the other side of things, I thought Taisun actually did a pretty nice job. I think the big thing with Taisun is he knows what he is. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. He's not a guy that's going to have a lot of success throwing the ball down the field, but he's pretty good on the short, quick, intermediate throws. He did a nice job with those against Pittsburgh, and then he does a pretty good job in the running game as well. So, his ceiling's not nearly as high as DJ's, but just as far as kind of taking what the defense gives you, making the smart plays and making the easy plays, he's done a pretty good job of that, or at least he did Saturday against Pitt.
So what's really interesting here, I didn't get to see the Pittsburgh game in full, due to some unfortunate circumstances. But what I've seen thus far this year, it seems like DJ is putting Clemson's defense in bad position after bad position, whether it's not being able to convert on third downs on the first drive, too many 3-and-outs, or turning the ball over. It just seems like DJ's putting a little bit too much pressure on the defense, where all you need to do is just keep them a little bit rested, and they'll take care of things. But don't give the opposing team any points with pick sixes. Don't put your defense in a bad position. All of that being said, Taisun seems like a good choice for work this Clemson football team is right now, which is going to have to win ugly, but don't turn the ball over. don't make any costly mistakes and let the defense take care of things. Would you agree with that assessment or?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on, honestly. I mean, Brent Venables even said sometime this past week, he felt like the defense after it got to 14 to, it's 14-7 at halftime. Clemson still feels like it's in a decent spot, and then it comes out and the pick six. Clemson's defense hasn't even had a chance to stop Pitt, and now you're down 21-7, down 2 scores. And he said he really felt like they didn't respond well from that point. And he was frustrated by that, but at the same time, you can understand, like, man, we've been playing our tails off, just fighting, trying to keep us in the game against one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and now we don't even have a chance to stop them, and we give up a touchdown. So, I still think I will say that I do think DJ has the ability to play smarter, to make these plays. Maybe he goes back to practice this week, and that's just a huge emphasis. Is, hey, you've got to protect the football. You've got to make sure that you're not turning over. Don't take these chances. If it's not there, throw it away. And maybe instead of saying, hey, we're gonna keep working and we're gonna explode as an offense one game, maybe to say, hey, just take it easy. Don't push it too much. Don't press things, and we'll just find a way to win the game. So I do think possibly if he has a little different mindset, he's not a bad option at all to start. I actually think he probably will start this game, but I do think we'll see a lot of Taisun as well.
Same here, completely agree. And let's get into the game itself, because Florida State is 3-4, Clemson is 4-3. Clemson season, if you all are watching us on YouTube, I'm going to do a hand movement here. It's like up and down, up and down. That's kind of Clemson season thus far. Whereas with Florida State, it was, mainly down, and then just, their stock has kind of skyrocketed recently, winning 3 straight games, beating UNC. What do you expect to see from this game, Matt? How do you expect for it to play out?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be another close, low-scoring game probably. I know Florida State's been running the ball great this year. Jordan Travis at quarterback has been awesome, but they're still one-dimensional. They're not doing a whole lot at all in the passing game right now, and that's just hard to win like that going up against a Brent Venables defense. I mean, I know Clemson had some issues defensively in the past game and didn't force a punt towards the end of the game. But Pitt was also doing a little bit in the running game and in the passing game. Kenny Pickett made some scrambles. I don't think Clemson's defense really has to respect Florida State's passing game at all. And so, with that being the case, I just think it's hard to have success against Clemson when you can only do one thing. So, I think it'll be a really good game. I think Clemson's going to have a hard time blocking Jermaine Johnson, who the Georgia transfer, who has been incredible this year for Florida State coming off the edge. I'm sure they'll move him around some and try to get him on Walker Park some, Clemson's right tackle, and maybe even move him inside some as well and try to test the interior of that Clemson offensive line. So, man, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit later, but the injuries as well are just going to make it tough on Clemson. So, I'm leaning Clemson. I think Clemson will find a way to win and extend that home winning streak, but I don't think it's going to be easy at all. And honestly, wouldn't be surprised at all if it's another low-scoring game that's decided in the final seconds.
Yeah, I expect for the game to be played out the same way as you just said there. It's really interesting to see what kind of Clemson team is going to come out this week. We've been seeing the same team essentially for the first 7 weeks of the season, but does DJ feel a little bit more pressure with Taisun coming into the game and, getting some significant snaps compared to the previous games and, decides to turn it on a little bit, maybe not take some of those risks, be a little bit more accurate, have a little bit better footwork, does that added pressure assist him a little bit? And then you mentioned the injuries as well. How much of a role is missing Kobe Pace going to play? Injuries with Frank Ladson being out for the year and Braden Galloway being out for the year. How much is that going to factor into things? And then also the Seminoles, is it going to be the first 4 games of the season Florida State team, or is it going to be what we've seen these past 3 weeks? So, yeah, I think it's really interesting. And one thing I also want to talk about with this game is the impact of the result either way. I feel like this is kind of a swing game that could determine, whether Clemson finishes at 9 wins or whether they finish potentially at 6 wins, and that's definitely a possibility. Do you feel that way looking at the schedule, that this is definitely a must win for Clemson if they want to be able to get to that 8-9 win mark?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that earlier this week that, I feel like if you win this game, you're looking at 8-4, 9-3, and still even having a chance to get to 10 wins with the bowl and keep that streak alive. I mean, Clemson's won. I know they've had some streaks broken this year. They've won 10 they've won 10 games at least 10 straight years, which is just incredible consistency. So right now they still have a chance to do that, especially if they can get a bowl win. On the other side, if you drop this game, all of a sudden, man, you're staring 6-6, 7-5 straight in the face. You got to go to Louisville next week, a tough road test. Louisville's been playing pretty well. Then you've got UConn, which will be an easy win. But Wake Forest coming to town, which is not going to be easy at all. And finishing the season at South Carolina, which is a team that's, if you want to see an offense worse than Clemson's or they're struggling more than Clemson, turn on South Carolina because it's been ugly over there. But still, on the road, who knows what could happen in that game. So, yeah, I think this is a huge swing game for Clemson for sure to try to see what kind of season they're going to end up having and see if they can turn it on this week. One other thing I wanted to touch on, I thought what you mentioned with pressure with DJ, I think it's interesting. Like, I think just personally, he could feel more pressure this week when you have another quarterback coming in. Now, it's not your job. The staff have been really supportive, saying he's our guy. We're gonna stick with DJ. Once they went to him, there's no putting that back in the box. You can't undo that. He was benched and it happened. And so, I think it has to be a little more pressure, I would think, on him now to know that, man, if I screw up right here, I'm coming out of the game, and we have another quarterback on the sideline. So I kind of look at it as a potential negative, I guess, negative as far as how he could handle it. Tony Elliott asked him that question this week. He kind of sees it as a positive, and kind of the way the staff's looking at it as, hey, when Marcus Tate was struggling, we set him down for a couple games. He was able to bounce back. He was much better when he came back in and after he watched for a little bit. And so that's kind of what they're hoping happens with DJ, is to take some pressure off of him and he's just kind of able to relax. But yeah, I think that's a huge point in this game. It's just how he bounces back from that.
Yeah, this game pretty much rides on how much DJ or Taisun, what they'll be able to contribute, because right now with the running back situation, Kobe Pace being out, which Will Shipley had just come back from his first game in a few weeks against Pittsburgh and had that crucial drop, like you mentioned. And then, Phommachanh being the other running back there, who's a freshman. Not having Lynn J. Dixon right now, that kind of hurts a little bit. I don't know how much Michael Dukes would have been able to help, but you would want a little bit more depth with the injuries and, Kobe Pace being in a COVID protocol. But I definitely think it's going to be up to the quarterback here. I just think the quarterback needs to be a game manager, let the defense do their thing. All right, Matt, so looking at those injuries, Kobe Pace is going to be out with COVID protocol. This upcoming game, obviously not a physical injury, but he's going to be out nonetheless. Matt Bockhorst is going to be out the rest of the season, as well as Frank Ladson, Braden Galloway. Matt, I don't think I've ever seen it, whether it's professional, collegiate, basketball, football, baseball, whatever sport. I don't think I've ever seen a team this snake bitten before. What have you thought about all the injuries they've had to deal with, the COVID protocol, all of those things?
Yeah, it's just been awful luck. It seems like every other day there's a new injury. It's funny. I asked Dabo Wednesday night if they had any injuries in the last 24 hours since he had just talked to the media. And he said, that's a fair question, just with everything they've had going on. And he said, I don't think so yet, but text me in a little bit and I might have a different answer. So it's just been a crazy year. It's really, really unfortunate. Kobe Pace, huge loss. He's really been running the ball well. Same thing with Ngata last week, who was out at Pitt. He's been your one receiver who's really gone and made a lot of plays downfield. He misses that game. Matt Bockhorst is a horrible situation there. His career ending. He had a great season since he had switched back over to guard. Obviously, he struggled some at center early in the year, but really thought he had played well since moving back over to guard. A leader on the team, which Clemson really needs a leader right now too. So, or particularly on offense. So man, just a ton of injuries, and it's not going to get any easier with these guys out and several of them out for the year. Brent Venables and Dabo both said, they've never seen a season like this. And obviously both of those guys have been around a long time and been a part of a lot of football teams.
So Matt, is this a season where you just chalk it up as a lost year at this point with all the injuries that they've sustained? having a new starter at quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei and him not really being able to live up to expectations. The wide receivers, there's been just a lot of new starters and new players coming in and having different roles. You just chalk it up to a lost season for Clemson and say, okay, we're going to move on in 2022?
I don't think you do that just because of just the seniors on this team. I mean, you have a lot of seniors who have played a lot of football, playing a lot of big games. And I don't think you want those guys to go out with a 6-6 season or feel like that their careers ended on a bad note. I mean, you're talking about guys like James Skowski, who's been in huge games, and Nolan Turner, who made a game-winning or game-saving interception against Ohio State a couple years ago. Just some of these guys that have been around for a long time, and Justin Ross battled back through a neck injury and had surgery and did all this to fight to play. So I think you just keep playing, keep chugging along. Man, I mean, it's just been a weird year, though. It's been a rough year. I do wonder, a guy like Will Shipley, who said this past week he's still not 100% and kind of working his way back. I do wonder if you should be a little more careful with him, a freshman, a young guy. But at the same time, it's hard right now when you have Kobe Pace out and no depth at running back. But still, I mean, that's the one guy where maybe, I think I'd be a little more careful just to make sure everyone's 100% before I send them back on the field. But yeah, it's just been a tough year for sure. And I think you just keep trying to find a way to win games and finish, maybe 8-4, 9-3, maybe even 10-3 with a bowl win.
Now, let me add another layer.
I'll make one more point. I mean, they're still in contention for the ACC title right now. I mean, they're going to need some help, obviously. I'm just telling you, I mean, if they win out, they're going to be right there. I think, Wake Forest and NC State have some tough games down the stretch. So, I mean, I think 6-2, maybe you work your way into a 3-way tie, and who knows what happens. Beat Wake Forest. That's one of their losses right there. Just need NC State to drop one more and Wake Forest drop another one. So anyway, I just want to throw it out there.
Is that a bold prediction, Matt? Are you going to say that Clemson makes it to the ACC championship game?
Matt. I'm not ready to predict that yet, but I do think that they still have a shot, an outside shot, but they do still have a shot.
Yeah, I think I'm on the definitive Clemson won't make it to the ACC title game train. What has this team shown me to make me believe that they would be able to get to that point? If you take out the SC State game, they're pretty much 3-3 against FBS teams, haven't scored 20 points in regulation. All these factors that you wouldn't normally associate with Clemson football, that's what we're seeing this year. And I should have rephrased the last question that I asked you, Matt. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to add another layer. Do you necessarily chalk this up to a lost year, like just everything that could go wrong went wrong? Or do you say there's some deeply rooted issues here for Clemson football that will affect them going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't know that there's like these totally really deep issues that you just need to blow it up and start over type thing. Mm-hmm. But there are some things that need to get corrected. I mean, some of the, it's not like Clemson was playing great before these injuries started happening. I mean, they were, for the most part, they were pretty healthy going into the Georgia game. Offensively, they scored 3 points. Not too banged up for Georgia Tech. 13 or 19 points. I mean, it's not like these issues just started when guys started getting injured. So, I do think that they need to analyze some things in the offense or in the off season, particularly on offense. Try to figure out, how to get a little more dynamic there. Have a little more success on offense for sure. I think it's something that needs to happen this off season. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you just completely start over either. I mean, Dabo's done this a long time. He's not just going to blow up his plan that's worked, for years and years and produce 2 national titles and 6 straight playoffs. He's not just going to forget his whole plan and get rid of some of these coaches that have been around for a lot of that. But I do think that some things need some tweaking for sure going into next year.
Not only do they need tweaking, there needs to seemingly be a philosophical change with how Clemson approaches things. The conversation that's been brought up is the transfer portal. You wrote a great piece a few weeks ago about some players that were in the portal that Clemson definitely could have used. Is that something that you think Clemson needs to go to, start utilizing that a lot more?
Yeah, and I think they probably will. And I had someone describe it to me as like Clemson put themselves on sanctions, which I think is kind of fair in a way. I mean, you've got all these other teams around the country that are all taking transfer portal additions. And, if you're not doing that, you're at a disadvantage. And I think that's a fair way of looking at it. So, I think that they need to. I think they probably will. My guess is that they'll go to the portal this offseason. So, I think the interesting thing is, do they only go to the portal if they're going to add a surefire starter, which has been Dabo's stance in the past, or do they go to the portal to bring in a guy who can compete, who maybe is your number 4 receiver, number 5 receiver, who is maybe your 6th best offensive lineman, who can provide depth on the defensive front if they miss on some of these guys in this class. So I think that's more of the conversation, is how much do they use the portal? But I do think that they'll definitely use it this offseason. I think they need to.
So now that we've got some of those big picture questions out of the way and topics out of the way, let's talk a little bit about this upcoming game from a different perspective. Recruits that are going to be in attendance, and obviously the biggest of them all, Arch Manning. Peter Woods out of Alabama is going to be there. He's a top 30 overall junior. AJ Harris out of Alabama as well is going to be there. Monroe Freeling, in-state prospect, offensive lineman. It's going to be a loaded list. There's going to be a lot of talented players that are going to be at Clemson this weekend. Does that add even more pressure from the coaching staff and from the players to perform here? Because you have to put on a show for, a lot of these big recruits that are going to be in town. I know there's going to be a lot that are going to be in attendance for the UConn game, but that's not going to really show a lot. This game right here feels like a statement game for the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you don't want to lose this game for sure. I don't know that you need to come out and say, all right, we need to score 50 points and win in dominant fashion. I mean, Clemson's done that enough over the past few years, even with the same coaching staff. They hung 70 or so on Florida State a few years ago and had the guy from Florida State reading a book with his shirt off in the stand. So I think Clemson's proven that what it can do. Maybe, even if this is one bad year, I don't think one bad year is necessarily going to change the way recruits view Clemson, big picture wise. But yeah, I mean, Clemson has a chance to keep this streak going against Florida State. I believe it's going for 6 straight wins against FSU, which would be a heck of an accomplishment. So I think you want to keep that streak going, but I also think you want to, if you're the fans, I think more so what can maybe turn off recruits is, if there's booing at the game, or if there's, screaming at players, or screaming at coaches, or fire this, or, all that kind of stuff. I think that's when recruits are saying, man, do I want to come be a part of this? But I think the big thing that Clemson preaches is family, is culture, is that kind of stuff. We're just one big family. And so if you start having booing and upset fans, I think that can be a bad look. I know fans are frustrated. I know it has been a bad season. It's not the season anyone wanted, but I think if you want to try to help get things turned around, probably the best thing you can do is go cheer loud tomorrow, be loud when they're on defense, be quiet when they're on offense. Have an awesome crowd for the introduction, get there early for running down the hill. All that kind of stuff is probably the way to help with recruiting right now.
And also PSA, don't swarm Arch Manning. I know he's a big time kid. He's a big time prospect, but at the end of the day, he wants to speak with the coaches, kind of interact with the fans a little bit, and talk with the players. But he definitely is going to be treated like a celebrity. And I had a chance to go see him on Wednesday, Matt. I kind of want to talk a little bit about my conversation with him. Definitely a situation where his head coach Nelson Stewart told me, don't want to ask too many specific questions, like who's the leader, how would he fit in the offense, those kind of things. But I did get to ask him about Clemson, and he said he's looking forward to this upcoming trip. Said that he's looking forward to being in Death Valley. He heard that it's an awesome environment, is what he said. And then when talking about his interest in Clemson, he says he feels like the culture there is unmatched, which I thought was, the biggest quote, the most noteworthy quote, I should say, that he provided during our conversation there. And then looking at Clemson's production of quarterbacks and wide receivers, I wrote a piece earlier on Friday talking about his interest in them. He said that he followed Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor was actually his mentor at the Manning Passing Academy. And so he got to know him there a little bit too. So that was an interesting connection. And then when I brought up Clemson's production of wide receivers, they have 10 right now in the NFL on NFL rosters. And he said that, it's appealing to him because you want to play with good players, you want to play with good playmakers, those kind of things. So overall, I thought it was a very interesting conversation. I don't necessarily know where Clemson stands. I would say they're in the top 3. I would lean toward Texas being the leader right now. But Arch is keeping everything in house. He's not really even letting his coach know. It's between him and his family. So I think it's going to be a situation where you need to see it play out. He may honestly just commit in like 3 weeks and we wouldn't even know. He doesn't have social media, he doesn't really text reporters and things like that. So yeah, I found him to be a really good kid though, level-headed. That's what his father Cooper described to me, when we were talking about our conversation. And yeah, just a genuinely good kid, very talented. I'll have some videos uploaded from his practice there, but yeah, I came away really impressed with him.
Yeah, and I just want to say, y'all make sure y'all go check out Joseph's stories on Arch up on our site, clemsonsports.com. Great stuff. Like you said, he went out, flew out, was visiting with him in person. Got a lot of good stuff from Arch. Have some good stories coming from his coach as well, just more about Arch as a player, as a person, as a prospect, that kind of stuff. So encourage y'all to go check it out. We're still on our subscription deal. It's $10 for an entire year or $1 for 4 months. I mean, you can't beat it. So really encourage y'all to come check it out and give us a shot, see what we have to offer.
Yeah, it's definitely a great time. And that 4 month for $1 deal, that's actually pretty good because you get to be in the football season, the tail end, and also go into basketball, into the basketball season. Matt's been providing a lot of great hoop scoop, as he calls it, on the Tigers Den board. So be sure to check that out. We're going to have a lot of recruiting coverage following this upcoming game against Florida State. And then also the November 13th UConn game. There's going to be a lot of official visitors, specifically Clemson commits. Trevor Etienne, top running back target's going to be in attendance there. Andre Green Jr., wide receiver out of Virginia. So be sure to subscribe, take advantage of this great deal. And yeah, Matt, before we sign off here, is there anything that you would want to say on the recruiting front, the football front?
Yeah, not really. Like you said, it's an exciting time over at ClemsonSports.com. And basketball season, the first exhibition is next week. Crazy, it's already here. Like you mentioned, tons of big time prospects coming in. We'll have updates on those guys as well. So a lot going on. Obviously, a big game Saturday. Anytime, as Dabo said, anytime Clemson, Florida State get together, it's a big game. It may not be what we're used to around here. These two teams have combined to win the last 10 ACC titles. Probably not going to happen this year, but at the same time, it's a Clemson, Florida State game. It's a big game. It should be a lot of fun. So keep it tuned to ClemsonSports.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we'll have another podcast after the game, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.
Matt, I feel like you're getting pretty close to predicting that Clemson's going to go to the ACC championship because you said probably. Come on, Matt. Go all in. Say it. Clemson's going to win the ACC.
Probably. I'm not going that far yet. Maybe that'll be on the wrap-up podcast after the game.
I will see. We'll see. Be sure to be on the lookout for that as well. And until we see you all again, thank you all for tuning in.